Shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. And I just wanted to touch base with all of you in continuing the series of study, the Dietary Laws, a diet for the soul and a diet for the body. On the issue of meat and milk mixtures, where we left off in our last video, from the thrice stated commandment in Scripture that you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Now, Onkelos, who usually keeps close to the Hebrew text, renders this that you shall not eat flesh and milk. And in fact, we find this be the case in Exodus 23, verse 19, and chapter 34, verse 26, and in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 21. The oral Torah derived the prohibition against cooking meat and milk together, against eating such a meat and milk mixture, and against deriving any benefits from such meat and milk mixtures. Although milk comes from a kosher animal is permitted, it is precisely this kosher milk which, when mixed with meat of cattle or sheep or goat, that the Torah forbids. The rabbinical ordinance which enacted a fence to safeguard the observance of these commandments are these reflected practices followed in the kosher household. Although fowl, chicken, was not included in the biblical prohibition, but rather you'll find this in the rabbinical decree extended to the prohibition of meat, milk mixing, including fowl as well. So a chicken cheese sandwich would be something we would not have. The use of the term meat here, therefore, refers to all fowl in all instances. The term meat in Yiddish, fleshik, or basar in Hebrew, or dairy, milchik, or in Hebrew, chalav. For the purpose of these religious laws, it refers not only to the actual meat and milk, but to the products that contains meat and milk ingredients. So, also to eat meat and milk fats, products made from them together. A food product containing meat, nor milk, nor derived is from either neutral. This is why we have the term in Hebrew parv, which also includes the idea of being stam, or in a third category that's neither meat nor milk. It's really categories which are neither meat or milk. Everything which grows from the soil, vegetable, fruits, nuts, coffee, spices, sugar, and salt, are all considered parv, or stam. All kosher fish also are considered parv. Eggs, unless it has blood in it, or it's already been incubated such the point that need to be set aside, would be considered meat, but when it doesn't, it's considered parv. Items manufactured from chemicals as well. Parv food may be eaten or cooked with either dairy or meat products. Any vessels that dairy product, meat or dairy products, may not be cooked or served in the same vessel, even if it's not at the same time. So a vessel that perhaps was cooked meat is considered a meat vessel. A dairy vessel that was cooked, let's say, cheese or milkic product, would be considered a dairy vessel. And thus, any vessel that has been used for the preparation of both meat and milk, even if it's not at the same time, and has thus absorbed minute quantities of both milk and meat, is rendered non-kosher. And therefore it's necessary to separate cooking and eating utensils, dish and tablewares, from meat and dairy dishes. These must be properly marked or easily distinguished one from the other, from colors, design, form, or size. Now, we understand that many Sephardims utilize utensils, or, for example, glassware, which does not absorb according to the halakhic prescription, and thus These rules that are stringently absorbed or observed by the Ashkenazi community may not be so stringently observed by the Sephardic community. A specified time period must elapse after one has eaten meat before one could eat dairy. There are different opinions as to the length of period of time which to wait. Acceptable practices range from 3 hours to 6 hours waiting period. The reason for the waiting period is to allow for the time of deterioration of the fatty residues which clings to the palate and does not easily rinse out and out of the meat particles which can be lodged in the crevices of the teeth. The reverse is not necessary. After one eats a dairy product or dairy plate, one may rinse his mouth with water and eat some neutral solids such as bread, vegetables, and proceed to eat a meat meal. The reason is that dairy products do not possess the fatty liquids or fatty qualities of meat and becomes lodged between their teeth in the same manner. Should there be dairy products of which is not so, like for example some hard cheeses, the product which is not so may wait a period of time, and usually you'll see some will wait about an hour or just in between rinsing of the mouth before having a meat plate. Here's some other things that we need to know regarding this. A person who is ill or has a very small child is permitted to shorten a waiting period to 1 hour. Some will even go down to 30 minutes. If necessary, provide the care that is taken to cleanse the mouth and the teeth thoroughly and provide the final grace after meal that is said, and thereby designating the second eating period is not just a continuation of the meat meal, but in fact just can continue. The part of food cooked in a meat vessel must be served in a meat dish and may not be eaten together with dairy. One does not, however, become fleshic or basar with it, and it's permissible to eat dairy immediately thereafter. Okay, the kitchen sink, unless there are two separate ones, actually becomes non-kosher vessels as it absorbs the remnants of both meat and dairy. Dishes, meat and dairy should therefore be not soaked directly into the sink or the same basin. This makes the dishes non-kosher. Even the meat and dairy dishes are not soaked together at the same time. Separate basins that fit into the sink ought to be used for soaking dishes. Similarly, colored plastic grills upon which to stack the dishes should be used. The same dishwashing machine may be used for meat and dairy if one acquires a set of racks and actually holds the dishes and utensils, reserving one rack for the meat dishes and the other for dairy. This allows the machine to run through its cycle between each meat and dairy use vice versa. The empty run does not require a full cycle. A rinse and hold cycle using detergent is sufficient. The rabbinic authorities have ruled differently and do not permit the use of the same machine, even under specified conditions. Some will use the dishwashing for meat plates only because with dairy it's much easier to keep those plates kosher. It's also common practice to designate towels of one color and design to meat dishes and towels of another design or dairy dishes. This is proper practice to follow, as it prevents the dish towel that was used for drying meat dishes from being mistakenly used the next time for dairy. If necessary, any cleaning laundered dish towel may be used for meat or dairy. For one person to serve meat meal and the other dairy at the same table, a clear separation distinction, a cutoff point needs to be made in sitting down, and having such a plate. Different tablecloth or placemat for one and the other. The use of butter and milk substitutes with meat. This development takes place as a result of pure vegetable products that looks and tastes like dairy products, but they're intended to be a substitute. I do that all the time, especially in the morning. In their parve, the butter looking or margarine looking is parve. It's neither meat or dairy and can be used for either one. Some will go to the point where they will buy one container for meat and one for the use of dairy. It's not necessary, but some will go to that point in separating that. There are no halakhic objections to the use in cooking and eating with meat meals, but since they may be mistaken for dairy counterpart, the sage's even appearance of transgression is proper for the purpose of identification to keep this to be kept and served in wrappers or containers of which it comes in. In other words, to be able to distinguish between those that are parve and those that are dairy. Not all coffee creamers or creams labeled non-dairy are in fact non-dairy according to the rules of kashrut. And the dairy products which should be not used at the table for meat meals. So make sure when you're serving your guests or even within the family that when you serve dairy, make sure it says non-dairy creamer, and it in fact is non-dairy and should not have an OUD symbol on it because that would automatically cause issues at the table if you're serving a meat plate. No issue if it's only dairy that you're serving. Water glasses may be used either at dairy or meat meals, and Pyrex and similar glasswares used for baking or cooking may be used by Sephardim for meat and dairy utensils. By Ashkenazic, in this book, To Be a Jew, is written for the Ashkenazic community because they do not hold that Pyrex or glassware cannot be absorbed. They hold it is absorbable, and thus they hold that the presence of intense heat makes it susceptible to absorption. We do not hold that as Sephardim. When purchasing food or preparing meals, it's important to note and take note of the ingredients to be fully certain as to the kashrut level, as whether to milchik or fleshik or parve food. The processing has become highly sophisticated today, and the labeling practices may be misleading for the kosher consumer. For example, monoglycerides or emulsifier may be manufactured either from vegetable or animal fats. They may be kosher or treifa. Lactose may be manufactured from milk or molasses. It may also therefore be dairy or parve. The word shortening alone also makes it indicate that the lard is of other animal fat, especially if you're into Cuban bread. Most Cuban bread made in a bakery, commercial bakery, is not made with just mere butter or margarine or vegetable. It's usually made with pig lard. While it's not only while there should be no kashrut symbol on it, there are reliable local kashrut agency that will label bread as OUD or parve, like in the case of the symbol of the Orthodox Union of Congregations. And this should be symbols recognized nationally. Now there are some miscellaneous prohibitions that we need to go through, and we'll take a look at some of these miscellaneous prohibitions, including kosher food being eaten out and other essential issues regarding keeping kosher and eating kosher even outside of the house, which could be a big challenge. So let's continue in this series of the Dietary Laws, a diet for the soul and for the body. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero. Shalom, shalom.